Almost a week has passed since the new expansion came out, and we already actually saw some nerfs as well, which didn't really change too much, but still, they're trying. In this video, I will give you 5 of the best decks right now, show you its mulligans, matchups, as well as some general tips and ideas for them, so you know what to expect with and against them. But we will also go over all of the other working archetypes so you guys can see how the meta is forming, and maybe see what your favorite class is up to as well. If you're serious about Hearthstone, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Now, let's check out the decks.
You are not prepared!
The first deck on the list is gonna be one of the nerfed ones, and we have Frost Aggro Death Knight doing a killer of a job, being an absolute force to be reckoned with right now. Despite the location getting nerfed, it's still a monster of a deck, and it's super strong. You've already seen how the deck plays out, and you basically know what to expect with and against it, but in this particular variant we're also running a couple of hardcore cultists, so you can have that extra bit of layer of AoE, but just don't forget you have to actually trigger the finale. But also don't forget you also don't need to trigger the finale if you just want the 2 damage to the face. Cause you can target anything with this, including your own stuff if that ever matters, but who knows, in some cases it might. Other than that, the deck is basically same old standard stuff. We have a couple of Might of Menethils, which is basically a mini Frostworm's Fury, which is extremely powerful in board-centric matchups, and it's also 8 damage on a stick. We also have Viziers, including school teachers, so you can discover some extra bit of crazy good stuff, including triple room cards, which are not even needed to be Frost. We have a couple of Barons so you can draw a lot. And we're also running the nerfed location, which some decks actually are swapping out for the new Rowdy Fan, which is not a bad idea, but I still pretty much like the location though. Matchup wise from Diamond to Legend, you're gonna be happy to see that you literally don't even have bad matchups right now. Blood Death Knights, I went 5-0 on the last coaching session with it, so it's not even a 50-50, I think you're still heavily favored there. But also Undead Priest might be a problem if you actually manage to find one, and I doubt you will nowadays. But yeah, the rest is very favored, or at least 50-50. For the mulligan, going first you want your Egg, your Arms Dealer. Baron is not a bad keep going first as well. If you're already curving out, you might even consider Frigidara, even though when going first you literally already have to have something like Arms Dealer and Egg to actually consider her. Sidekick is not bad, but make sure to already have the Egg, or at least Arms Dealer. Bonebreaker also not the worst thing in the world to keep, but be smart about it. If it's not against a board-centric matchup, you might skip on it. And the rest are also not amazing keeps, even though it's not the worst thing in the world to keep a Vizier if you're curving into it. When on the coin, the location also becomes a lot more keepable. You can also consider things like Frost Strike, even though I rarely actually keep it. Frigidara becomes a lot more keepable, the weapon becomes MVP, and you still want your Egg and Arms Dealer. Skeletal Sidekick, even more keepable here, because worst case scenario you could also just tempo it out on turn 1, or save it for a turn 2 or turn 3 combo with your hero power. The rest, again, usually not that amazing. But if you already have a good curve, you might even consider keeping a good 4-drop. On the number 2 spot we also have Blood Death Knight, which is also a nerfed deck, but they still usually find room for the location in there, at least in top 1000 legends from the popular lists right now. There are other variants without the location, and I guess you could swap them out for something like Teotar or ETC with a bunch of Teotars, Zola, and I don't know what else you would put in the ETC. But yeah, it's still actually running the location here, and it's still feeling pretty good in early game. The deck is very powerful, it has tons of control, tons of lifesteal, and also it can actually build pretty respectable boards as well with the help of the new Screaming Banshee. No Muncher is also a powerhouse of a minion, and you can actually inflict serious damage to the opponent's face with this, especially if it actually sticks. We have Mograine to put the opponent on the clock, Patchwork to burn some stuff, Soul Eater, Corpse Explosion, and Blood Bow are crazy good removals. And you also have great single target removals like Death Strike, as well as Asphyxiate. The new weapon is also pretty nice, so you can build some good minions with it. And it actually does increase the minion size even just by trading. But yeah, the rest is basically Blood Death Knight, and you can check out my guide about it to know how to better play with it. Matchup wise, currently you don't really have any bad ones. Like the worst thing you could be facing with this deck is a Mirror, but also the new Tony Druid could be a problem, as well as Relic Demon Hunters sometimes, because they can dish out crazy big damage very fast. For the mulligan, you're trying to curve out well when going first with your Bodybagger, the weapon's always great, Show Fallen Baron gives you a lot of card draw, and Hematurge can also be a good turn 2, but typically turn 3 card because you actually need a corpse for her to actually discover something for you. School Teacher and Vizier are pretty decent, depending on the matchup you might consider Blood Boil. Location I'd say is a great thing to be keeping as well, and if you already have good things, you might even consider things like Sylvanas, Asklor, or Soul Stealer, but be careful. Tour Guide I'd say is always not a bad thing to include, and that also helps you get the Hematurge on too, but yeah, try to be smart about what you keep when going first. When going second, again you want your good 1-drops, but you can also keep heavy things like Mograine, Sylvanas, and even the Soul Stealer in certain cases honestly, especially if you're curving out well. The location is still a pretty decent keep, same goes for School Teacher and Vizier, and again depending on the matchup you might even consider some of the good removals here. And on the number 3 spot, we also have Unholy Death Knight, because that's just how balanced the meta is right now. All 3 of the Death Knights are crazy good, especially from Diamond to Legend, but you won't really see too much of Unholy Death Knight in top 1000 Legend, so keep that in mind. Even though the entry level for this deck is not too high, the skill cap for it is also not too high, so you're probably not gonna climb super far with it. But yeah, right now this version of Unholy Death Knight actually dropped the location, including the eggs and the Death Rattle package, with things like Vicryl Necrolite, and we also have the double Nerubian Swarm Guards back into the deck, which I had a feeling it should have in the first place. The rest of the deck is standard stuff. We have Astalor in here, the new Tour Guide also complements the deck very well, and also the new Rowdy fan is pretty sticky, as well as the +4 is pretty huge. For the matchups, we're gonna have to look at a more populated list, but you're gonna have decent time both against Frost and Blood Death Knight, even though Blood definitely feels like a pretty hard matchup, and you're also gonna be toe-to-toe with Pure Paladin too. For the mulligan, you're always gonna want your Battle Fiend Necromancer, Tour Guide is pretty nice, Nerubian Swarm Guard is also acceptable when you're curving into it, Hawkstrider Rancher can also be pretty good, and when you're going second, Plague Strike makes a lot of sense, even though it's not even bad when going first. If you already have a good 1-drop to stick, the Necrolite can be pretty good, Vizier is not horrible, Bodybagger is also a nice opener, and obviously Arms Dealer is also pretty nice. Other than that, for the Death Knight class, it's basically variations of these 3 archetypes. And we can also see that Rainbow Death Knight is actually not doing that well right now, so you're probably better off without it. On the number 4 spot we also have Pure Paladin, which is another somewhat nerfed deck with Light Ray bumped up with 1 mana, but honestly that really did not change that much. The deck is still seriously overpowered, and it's still pretty simple to pilot. You stick on the board with your sticky minions, you buff him, and you keep on refilling the board until the opponent stops kicking. There's also a variant that runs 1 Order in the Court so you can curve out better into your Countess, but it's a tricky card right now because you can't really cheat it out down to 0 mana, so there's that. You can also check out my guide about this deck so you know how to play better with it. For the matchups, here's what it looks like, and it's actually kinda surprising that a deck with such a high win rate is this bad against most of the Death Knights, because that's what you usually mostly see nowadays with it. And it's also not gonna be amazing against Demon Hunters. Miracle Rogue is also gonna be a problem, which is again actually gaining popularity back in top 1000. And also Totem Shaman is a bit negative for it. For the mulligan, going first, you want to get your good 1-drops. The new weapon's pretty nice, Boogie Down also pretty good. Depending on the matchup, you might even consider something like Katori if you expect the opponent can't really handle it. If you already have a good 1-drop, you might keep the Protector as well. And if you're already curving out well, you might even consider things like the Purator or even the Countess, even though she's a bit too heavy for you. One on the coin, again the good 1-drops, the weapon, Purator a lot more capable here. You could also consider Katori, so you can maybe coin it out on turn 3 with a 2-mana buff or something. Liadrin can also be decent, but don't forget you can also use her later with a buff with your 2 Light Rays, and that can be extremely powerful too. The Countess again is somewhat capable, but try to curve into it. Boogie Down still pretty good. For other good Paladin decks, we basically are revolving around the pure aspect. There's also this Bubble Paladin, which is basically just Pure Paladin, but with a different name. Like, this one literally has a single different card from something that's called Pure Paladin, so that's pretty weird, but whatever. Mech Paladin is also doing quite alright, even though it's probably not gonna be super amazing in top 1000. And there's also a Silverhand Paladin, which is a lot less powerful than the other variants. This big Dancing Paladin is not worth crafting, so stay away from that. And on the last spot we have this Relic Demon Hunter, which is actually doing very good even in top 1000 Legends, and it's not that hard to even play either. The deck is using all of the good relics right now. We no longer have Jace, but for some reason that's not even a problem, but we are running the new Photographer Fizzle, which is actually insane with this deck, especially if you take a screenshot of a very discounted hand. You usually draw tons of cards with this deck, so it's no problem finding your 2-mana snapshot of your hand, but you do actually have to make enough room for it to load up in your hand so you can use it with all of its discounts and everything. This variant is slightly different from the one I played, and this one actually has a couple of Chaos Strikes instead of the Immolation Aura, which did feel awkward in most cases anyway. We have Illidari Studies in here, which usually discovers you a bit of extra damage or discounts, card draw, or lifesteal. Taste of Chaos felt clunky in most cases, but it's not a bad one-drop spell, I guess. With buffed up Unleash spells, you could do some serious damage to the opponent's face. Lady Steno's in here, and it combos off extremely well with the new Rowdy fan. We have a couple of Silver Moon Arcanists, and don't forget you won't be able to target face. So if you have Predations, consider if you actually want to load him up to the face before you put down the spell power. Fellerin gives you some nice discounted Outcast cards. School Teacher also can give you extra relics. Relic of Dimensions gives you tons of extra card draw, as well as huge discounts, and we also have Zymox in here, which is usually not a problem to get infused. A lot of the time your win condition is actually building very big Relic of Phantasms, but if the opponent has easy ways to clear those, you wanna be transitioning over to the Silver Moon Arcanist game plan or the Lady Steno game plan, or both. Matchup wise, I'm gonna have to show you the Immolation Aura variant because the other one is not populated enough, but Frost Death Knight's not gonna be too good for you, as well as Stony Druid. Pirate Rogue apparently is not great, whatever that is, but the rest looks pretty good. For the mulligan again, I'm gonna show you the Immolation Aura list, and that's the only difference, no Chaos Strike but Immolation Aura instead. And going first and second, you're always gonna want your Relic Vault. Fellerin apparently is a pretty good keep. Relic of Phantasms is also great. Illidari Studies is also not horrible, even though it kinda feels like a bait, it's not really that amazing of a one-drop. I wouldn't really be keeping Talnos most cases either. Same for Zymox, especially going first. Relic of Dimensions, going first, I think you still probably keep it, but be careful what you're playing against. And also Relic of Extinctions is usually also a keep, so you can load up the bigger relics later on. When going second, again Relic Vault, Zymox, a bit more keepable here, but again it's not really something you want to be having super early most cases. Relic of Extinction is still great, Phantasms as well. Taste of Chaos a lot more keepable here because you are going second, so you gotta be a bit more reactive. Fellerin still great, Vizier not bad as well, and here you might consider the Studies too because again you're gonna be a bit more reactive. Relic of Dimensions still a great keep honestly. For other good Demon Hunter decks we still have Outcast Demon Hunter doing pretty well, so the nerf again didn't really do much about it. There's also other variations of Relic Demon Hunter, including one with Xylag. But yeah, we basically have variations of these two decks over and over again. For the classes I didn't mention, starting off with Druid, we have Tony Druid picking up steam, and it's actually quite the powerhouse if you know how to play it. Hero Power Druid is also somewhat in there, but the win rate for it is not as amazing as people expected. With Hunter, we still have Face Hunter being pretty decent, and there's also the Big Beast Hunter also doing alright. And Big Beast is barely hanging in there. For Mage, we have this interesting Burn Mage archetype, which basically feels a bit like Aggro Mage again. Mech Mage is also doing fairly well, but you're gonna notice that the Light Show Mage as well as the Millhouse Mage are actually terrible right now. For Priest, apparently still Undead Priest is the best performer, even though it kinda felt horrible to me when I tried it, but I guess it's still a decent-ish tier 2 deck. Thief Priest is also back on the block, but it doesn't have amazing stats just so far. And we also have 40 Svalna Priest, which is still basically Thief Priest, but with Svalna. For rogues, from Diamond to Legend, Secret Rogue is probably your best bet, but in top 1000, actually Miracle Rogue is doing great right now. There's also this Pirate Rogue out there, which is somewhat doable, but the rest is different variations of this. For Shamans, we still have Totem Shaman being at the top, and there's different variants. Some include the new Amalgam Band, some variants are not even including the Gigantic Totem. But you're gonna notice that things like Big Shaman and Overload Shaman are actually not amazing right now. For Warlock, your best bet would be Fatigue Imp Warlock right now. I tried Thaddeus Warlock, and it turns out it's a super clunky deck. And even though you do see it high rolling from time to time against you, more often than not, it just flops. Curse Imp Warlock is not amazing either right now, and that's basically it for the archetype. And last and again least, Warrior is still pretty much in the dumpster with literally not a single archetype above 50%. Mech Warrior right now is at the top, but all around the class definitely needs desperate help. So that's gonna be it for this top 5 guys, hope this helps you figure out what you want to be playing in the new expansion. If you're serious about Hearthstone and you enjoy what I'm doing, drop a like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget you can hire me for some Hearthstone coaching. Thanks for watching, I'm Kris05 and I'll see you in my next video, or stream.